Welcome back to our Python class, and we are working with Tkinter or Tkinter graphical widget toolkit, which comes with Python standard library, and to create a basic graphical user interface. Actually, we can get quite advanced. Again, we have lots of ways of customizing, but first we created just some widgets, but we would like to create some interactivity basically. So that means we will want to respond to some user events, right? So basic idea is we need to create functions. We will create functions to handle some events basically, because we don't know when the event is going to happen. It could happen, user can enter or press some key at some point, but it could happen, just this very moment, but maybe in half an hour, right? And it could be different type of input, right? Just like this application, Visual Studio Code, right? If I'm typing, of course, the program has to be ready for my input, right? If I'm typing something here, right, it has to respond. So let's create some, add the button, add a plus button, let's do that, right? Plus, right, and add a minus button, right? You will have a, text plus and add a pattern back. Let's run this. Right, there's a plus button, and I can notice I can click it, right? So not very. So clicking works, right? It's a button, right? And of course we can adjust the size and all other good stuff, but we don't have anything happening, of course, because there's nothing to react to this, right? So there's nothing to react. We'll add a minus button maybe, right? For now, plus button is fine, right? And add a label to create a button to display for your text label to display the counter, right? So of course counter, right, text 0 for now, right? And of course we're going to pack it again. For now we're just using packing, which is the simplest way of creating adding our items. And of course if I run it now, right, we have plus, and we would like to see something changing here, right? Of course. Right, so basically we will need to create a function to update this, and we will pass it to the button basically. So create a function to change counter, right? Create a function to increase the counter, thank you, right? And basically get current value of the counter, right? Increase the value by 1, and then we change it to the counter label. We change the new value basically, right? So pretty simple stuff actually, right? That's exactly how it works. Again, different toolkits, right? We provide what to do, right? Now the last thing we'll need to do when we have created what to do, right? We have created a function what to do. We will need to bind it to the this plus button, right? We have plus button, but it doesn't know about this function. It doesn't know about this function. You need to assign it somehow. Depends on, of course, on the graphical user interface framework, on a library. They have different ways of assigning, but we'll see how it's done in Tkinter, right? So we need to bind it. Now bind it. Hopefully, yes, just like my AI assistant knows what I'm talking about. Hopefully, right? And basically, we add this increase counter function, all right, and that should do it. That should do everything, right? And let's see if it works. Let's run it, and let's see this work. Yeah, it works quite nicely. You see, that wasn't too hard, was it? Right? Of course, I can add a minus button, of course, right? Let's add a minus button, of course, right, and go down, right? And of course we'll need to do, for example, it doesn't work, maybe again it's extremely simple button. If you want to, there's no option for example, if I'm pressing down, right, it's not working, just I have to click by hand. There's no support for holding down, key press down. There are lots of things we could do to improve it, but it works, the basic thing works just fine. All right, we could add a negative button. Let's add a minus button, let's do that, add a minus button, right? All right, and notice, well, this is notice we can add the increase counter, right? It's not doesn't know about this function, right? So I will actually, all right, I'll add the minus button here, right? And notice, right? We can add it immediately, right? So it works, but this of course on button pack, right? And of course I will add the button minus. I'll call it button minus, right? This is button, right? Button plus. I should probably rename it. right? This is Control D, Control D. No, I don't like it actually. That's a problem with names, right? I'll need to, well, actually only two places, button plus and button plus, right? Because of course, again, plus plus. Do we have any other place we're using? No, so button plus config, right? So we add afterwards, right? Right, after creating it, right? We can also while also on bind to the function immediately. Yeah. So we of course we need decrease counter, right? So we need of course function define decrease counter. Of course it will be exactly just like this, right? And of course -1. We're using integer, right? Because it's a string, label is a string, of course, right? And we decrease the value and we add a new value, and now we have the function, and of course we are going to decrease the value right now, of course, right? Decrease counter, right? And we have our main loop, right? And it will run, right? So let's see how much time we have. We have a few more minutes, and let's run it. And of course I didn't pack it. Did I pack it? Plus works. Yeah, plus works. I didn't pack it. Oh yeah, button minus, right? So I did everything except pack the button, right? Of course, pack the minus button, right? So again, for now, of course, this packing is very simplistic. It just adds them all on a, in a row, basically. So packing, we will want to separate. Our next thing will be to make some layouts, right? For now, we are just saying, okay, we want something working, right? Plus, minus, right? So it works nicely, right? So we have a event. So basically, in your graphical interfaces, basically, right? We saw this here. It works, right? It's and GUI where we have here, right? Window icon. Basically, it works, right? So just basic, but it fits the loop, right? The loop I was showing you, the GUI loop, right? It works, because again, this is how vast majority of graphical user interface, again, doesn't matter the library, doesn't matter the language, Python or some other language, right? But the idea remains the same, right? You have some sort of event, you are responding. Of course, notice this this command, of course, it's bound, right? Theoretically, right? You could of course also change this. Nothing is preventing you from listening to some event coming from a network connection, right? Again, that things happen, like maybe some update happened on some network, right? And you could add it. This also could change the this counter label, right? It will also change the counter label value. There are multiple ways of accessing. So what remains? Well, what remains to be done? Well, quite a few things. Right? Of course, now to do create reset, but create a layout, right? Layout, right? Also, right? Of course, right? That's something to do. Bind reset, but that's of course, right? That will be something to do. We will do maybe in the class, right? Simple things, and hopefully also our goal would be, of course, nice to attach all of this good stuff to attach to some of our games, right? And again, attaching it to our existing game is a little bit, of course, complicated, because we are attaching after the fact. If you start with a graphical interface, it might be a little bit easier, right? But we'll see. It can be done. It's not that complicated, right? You just need to think a little bit, right? You need to think about how our application is structured. All right. So thank you, and hopefully you got the basic. This is the big idea of graphical interfaces, how you handle input, basically, right? This applies to mouse, right? Here is mouse click, but of course applies to keyboard, joystick, any other events. All right, thank you, and I'll see you in the class.